Folks, hello. Welcome to Tavern Chat. Today is Easter Sunday. I look at my watch now. It's April 4th, 2021. And as it's Easter, and it means that we're talking about, we're not talking about my clearing my throat, but we're talking about the resurrection of Christ. I mean, that's what Christians celebrate on Easter. It's on the third day, he rose again in fulfillment of the scriptures. Now, when you look at AD&D 1E, you have spells that deal with death and bring your heroes, your characters, back from the dead. And I am sure that they are greatly influenced to some extent by scripture, right? So, first one that you would come across would probably be Raise Dead. It's a 5th level cleric spell, 9th level cleric could cast it. And as opposed to its bigger brother Resurrection, it doesn't age the caster. So, I find that part interesting. So, Raise Dead. When a cleric casts a Raise Dead spell, he or she can restore life to a dwarf, gnome, half-elf, halfling, or human. Note, which general PC is actually two. There's two that are not included in this list. Oh, I just realized. Elf is not here, right? But also half-orc isn't here. Now, I find that interesting because half-orc is a PC character race or species or whatever we want to call it in today's era. But elves, you say that the elves can't be brought back because there's something about their souls or whatever. I forget what the justification was. Because they're long lived, their souls just stay dead when they're dead. But in any case, half-orcs, I didn't realize that. Okay. The length of time which the person has been dead is of importance, as the cleric can raise that person's only up to a certain point. The limit being 1 day for each level of experience of the cleric. So, again, 9th level cleric, you can go back to 9 days. 19th level cleric, you could bring somebody back from almost 3 weeks. Note, the body of the person must be whole, or otherwise missing parts will still be missing when the person is brought back to life. Okay. So, if somebody is missing a hand, they can still be missing a hand. If you're missing a finger, you're still be missing a finger. If you're missing a head, you're not using Raised Dead, I guess. Right? But now it doesn't say if you have the missing parts and you put them next. See, this is where DM abdication comes in, right? Like, well, so-and-so lost their head to a Vorpal Blade. But we have the head and we have the body. If we put them together, will they stitch up when we cast Raised Dead? I don't know. Talk to your DM. Now, the resurrected person must make a special saving throw to survive the ordeal. Resurrected person. So, text is important, right? Words are important. Resurrection is its own spell. So why are we talking as a resurrected person as the Raised Dead? Now, it could be because Gary saw Raised Dead as a lesser resurrection spell. And maybe it should have been called Lesser Resurrection as opposed to Raising the Dead. I don't know. But you can see that one certainly leads to the other. You can also reverse the spell, but we're not gonna touch upon that. Resurrection, 7th level spell. Much higher level cleric to cast this. And the cleric employing the spell is able to restore life and complete strength to the person he or she bestows the resurrection upon. The person can have been dead up to 10 years cumulative per level of the cleric casting the spell. So, in our example before, 19th level cleric can go back 190 years. See Raised Dead for limitations on what persons can be raised. So again, no elves, no half-orcs. The reverse destruction causes the victim of the spell to be instantly dead and turned to dust. Destruction requires touch either in combat or otherwise. Does not indicate whether there is a save. I mean, Resurrection itself has no save. I'm wondering if the reverse has one. The material component of the spell are the cleric's religious symbol and unholy water. Employment of this spell makes it impossible for the cleric to cast further spells or engage in combat until they've had 1 day of bed rest for each level of experience of the person brought back. And again, they will age 3 years. So you're not going to be casting very many resurrection spells if you are a cleric in AD&D, unless you, because only human clerics will get high enough level to cast resurrection. So, and they don't live long. They're not as long lived as dwarves and elves and such. So what's the other option we have? Well, the other option is reincarnation. And now reincarnation is a certain bit of a twist. Because, yeah, you're kind of bringing back the soul, but you don't necessarily get back what you put in. Let me explain. Reincarnation. This spell is similar to the 7th level Druid spell. I don't want the magic user spell just yet. Let me go back to the Druid spell. Because the Druid spell is where it starts. Druids have the capability of bringing back the dead in another body. So, you reincarnate. You might have been an elf before. Now you are a dwarf. Wouldn't that be karmic? Another body if death occurred no more than a week before the casting of the spell. Now notice it doesn't matter upon the spellcaster's level in this case. The person reincarnated would recall the majority of his or her former life and form, but the class they have, if any, in their new incarnation might be different indeed. Abilities and speech are likewise often changed. The table below gives the reincarnation possibilities of this spell. Now, this is the Druid List, and the Druid List is interesting because alphabetically it goes Badger, Bear Black, Bear Brown. You actually have a pretty good chance of coming back at the bear. Wild Boar, Centaur, Dryad, Eagle, Elf, Fawn, Fox, Gnome, Hawk, Human, Lynx, Owl, Pixie, Raccoon, Stag, Wolf, Wolverine, and a 15% chance to tell you to use the magic user table. Any sort of player character can be reincarnated. If an elf, gnome, or a human is indicated, the character must be created. What the fuck does that mean? All right, the character must be created. So what? Oh, I guess you can't come back as a dwarf. Oh, and you can't come back as a halfling. Interesting. Unless you're going from the magic user table. When a corpse is touched, a new incarnation will appear in the area within 1d6 turns. Let's go to the magic user table. Similar to the 7th level Druid spell, this is a 6th level magic user spell. Does not require a saving throw for system shock or resurrection survival. The corpse is touched and a new incarnation of the person will appear in 1 to 6 turns, providing the person has not been dead longer than 1 day per level of experience of the magic user. So now we're going back to magic user's level. Has importance here. The new incarnation. The new incarnation. Bugbear, dwarf, elf, gnoll, gnome, goblin, half-elf, halfling, half-orc, hobgoblin, human, kobold, orc, ogre, mage, troll. Note, very good or very evil persons will not be reincarnated as creatures whose general line is the opposite. The material component of this spell are a small drum and a drop of blood. I'm assuming a drop of blood that you require is maybe from the body of the person that you are reincarnating. So here's the question then, folks. And I pose this to the audience. Why is it that elves and half-orcs can't be raised or resurrected? I don't know. Are half-orcs because they are not considered to be one of the PC races, or half of them are not? Why are dwarves and halflings not possible to be reincarnated by a druid? Well, I should say not. They have a chance if you're going from the magic user chart. But if you are a human and you're reincarnated as a human, does that mean that you are still new class? They don't give you charts to figure out your new class as your new level. It's a very open-ended choice. If you come back as a badger, what the fuck, right? What are you gonna do as a badger? And I believe that wasn't it in the Rogues Gallery? Wasn't one of the characters in the Rogues Gallery reincarnated as a centaur? but that's not on the chart. So I'm just throwing this out there. Questions to ask on Easter. Now, I mentioned this yesterday on Gamers Health. If you want, you can find it on the YouTube channel. You're probably able to find it on the podcast, Tavern Chat. But one of the things we talked about is that Easter is about rebirth. And it's not just because we're talking about Christ. We're not just talking about the religious aspect of it. Easter is shortly after the beginning of spring. Spring is when plant life begins anew, right? Trees sprout, leaves come out, your allergies kicking, and the pollen comes out. You start planting flowers. Crocuses come up, lilies, tulips. It's about rebirth. All right. So even without the raised dead, even without the resurrection, it's still a season that's about rebirth. It's about fresh starts and new starts. And maybe this should be a season when, as opposed to New Year's, where we go, it's New Year's. I'm going to have a New Year's resolution. I'm not going to be as much of an asshole as I was last year. No. Why don't you make spring? Why don't you make springtime the time you make a resolution to start something new? Okay? Maybe work on your creativity. Maybe work on a diet, exercise. All these things. Maybe say, I'm going to start reading books again. Whatever it is, but make springtime the time you make those resolutions, not New Year's. Everybody fucking does New Year's. So, springtime. Think of that. All right, folks. For those of you that are celebrating Passover or celebrating Easter, may your holiday be a blessed and a happy and a holy one. We are in the midst of the world of the pandemic. I consider myself to be blessed. Everybody in this household has had the 2 COVID shots and are at least 2 weeks out of it, which means that my niece, my sister, my brother-in-law can all come over. We can also have one of my mother's cousins come over, another friend of the family, because they've both been fully immunized. They got their shots, they got their vaccines. So we're having a normal Easter, normal family gathering, and I wish that as best it can be. I wish that for everybody else that's listening. I really do, folks. Again, the pandemic. Use your common sense. Be safe. Be well. God bless. Roll those dice. Knock on wood. Hopefully I'm back again manjana. I should be. Why wouldn't I be, right? All right, folks. Have a blessed day. I'll talk to you later.